Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to a Monday edition of Mark Fisher Outdoors. What a weekend it has been. Redcrest, Scott Martin retiring from B.A.S.S, and we even had Captain Brock and that big fiasco that he had, and basically, the internet uproar with the viral Captain Brock. Guys, we're going to talk about all of this. We're going to talk about Redcrest. Let's just do it right now and say congratulations to Dustin Connell for his third Redcrest title, winning Redcrest 87 pounds, 11 ounces. I think the closest competitor was Wesley Strader, but 8.5 pounds behind. Third place, Zach Burge, 43 behind the leader, Dustin Connell. Dustin Connell, who quite honestly barely squeaked in at the end of day 2 to even make the knockout round. Just a phenomenal event. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about those other topics as well when we come back. Stick around. You aren't going to want to miss today's episode. A lot to unpack. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher, and yeah, we got a lot to unpack. And I watched all 4 days of Redcrest, and I did so out of fairness because I had watched the Bassmaster Classic, and I wanted to watch the Redcrest to be able to give my opinion in terms of the comparison. And I have to say, watching Redcrest was exciting. It was exciting from a standpoint of, I thought the coverage was much better. And I'm gonna start right there and just say something just as an observation. Because of the format that Major League Fishing has and the BPT anglers are used to, when the camera goes on a BPT angler, they know that it's showtime. They know to start talking. And whether they talk about the fishing, or whether they talk about a sponsor, or whether they talk instilling their own personality, like David Dudley or whoever it is that they are, it's entertaining. Unlike with bass, where a lot of times the camera would come on and they wouldn't talk, or they'd talk, but it wasn't really understandable, or quite honestly, the announcers would talk over them and have some guest on or something like that. This was a good program. It was interesting to watch. Yes, there were commercials. I wouldn't say that it was as bad as Bass, meaning there were that many, but they were repetitive and they were there. But I think that it didn't feel as frequent as the ones that were at the Classic. The biggest thing that was noticeable from day 1 was, what a nice relief to see. Okay, here's a 5-pounder, here's a 9-pounder, here's a 4-pounder. Weigh it, boom, it goes on the score tracker, and it goes right back in the lake. I get it. It doesn't lead to a big finale. But there's a part of this that's like, from a standpoint of, I was paying attention to it all day, watching it. I can't say I watched every minute of it, but you're watching it. The end comes, you go, okay, Dudley's leading. Okay, Lane's leading. And and now you don't have to tune into a 3-hour weigh-in to go through all of this stuff to get the actual results. You know what's happening. You know who the leaders are. They can go do their thing, and they can rig their boats and go eat and go to the expo, do whatever they need to do. I can go on with my day, and we'll tune in tomorrow morning and start watching the next thing. I thought it was clean. I thought it was nice, and I really thought it was good. Here's the surprising part, because I was getting and hearing that the expo wasn't doing well. But what I did find out when I actually made some calls is that this was one of the best expos. When I say best, meaning most highly attended expos in Major League Fishing's history. It was one of the best turnouts on Sunday. It was packed, from what I understand. And so The expo had a big attendance. We'll hear a little bit more about how the online audience was, but I gotta say, I was very impressed with the production of the Redcrest and the way that it was handled. I really thought that it was very, very positive. I'm absolutely interested to hear what you guys think. Did you watch it? Did you compare it to the Classic? Did you not even know it was going on? Love to hear what your thinking is on that. Speaking of which, before I get to this Scott Martin news, guys, if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button and tune in to Mark Fisher Outdoors every Monday through Friday. We put our videos out Monday through Friday, and we'd love to have you become part of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. So let's start talking about Scott Martin, because that was big news as well, almost bigger news than the Redcrest. So Scott Martin comes out and this gives a notification that he's quitting the Bassmaster Elites. This after a second situation in which he was protested for this one being for the upcoming Pasquotank River event. Scott put out a video where he's putting out his narrative, much the same way he did after the Okeechobee situation, where he's indicating his view of how things happened and how they went. The issue is that in both situations, the Okeechobee explanation from Scott and this explanation that Scott put out in his video absolutely just don't match the narratives that the people inside the fishing industry know to be facts that have been going on. And when I say know it from actual evidence that has come out, whether it be video evidence, whether it be conversations, whether it be firsthand people who have seen or heard things. And I get it. There's a lot of Scott Martin fans, and to be honest, my job is not to convince you to not be a Scott Martin fan. My job is to say that we've all talked about the fact that bass fishing is a marketing vehicle, and Scott Martin is a master at marketing, and he has created a brand. And his job, no matter what, is to continue that brand. And I believe that that's what he's doing. I also know, and I'm just talking in general terms right now, is that guys, if 10 years ago, I think Brian Latimer put out a phenomenal video. If you haven't seen it, go to his channel and watch it, where he talks about the history way back when all these older guys, they were hiring guides, they were flying over lakes, they were getting all this information. And that's the way it used to be. 100%, that's the way it used to be. Well, who were some of those older guys? Oh yeah, Scott's dad was one of those older guys. And if you were brought up that way and that's what you're used to, and again, I'm just saying this as that could be a factor in this is the way the game is played. Well, there's new rules. There's new focus on some of these rules. And if anglers these days are saying we want more concentration put on and focus put on people who are getting information, you either need to adapt to that or you're going to get caught up in that machine that is trying to hold people accountable for getting that information. And the reality is that within the tournament world, there's a lot of information that the narrative isn't necessarily the truth, but the narrative is the narrative. And if you want to believe the narrative, you're welcome to believe the narrative. That really is not my job to, like I said, to convince you otherwise. But if Scott is looking to continue his brand and do it in the way that he's doing this without fishing Bass Elites, that's fine. But I commend B.A.S. for we've talked about this in several episodes. They got the information. The rules say that if an angler knows about a rule infraction, they have to tell B.A.S. So the angler that protested him had to do what he had to do. B.A.S. got the information. They looked into it. Scott ended up taking the steps that he took that basically stopped that investigation before a ruling could take place. And so Scott had a right to do that, and B.A.S. did what they were supposed to do. And quite honestly, the angler that protested him did what he had to do also. So, I'm not going to get into the details that are being talked about very much in detail within the bass industry, because quite honestly, there's all sorts of threats and innuendos going around about anybody who kind of rocks the boat on this narrative. But so there's that. And then we've got the Captain Brock thing, which quite honestly, I just feel like at this point, I'm not a big fan of cancel culture at all. But if you deserve it, you deserve it. And I don't think there's any argument about the fact that this was pretty out there, and you got to be, we should all just get along. Guys, been a long video, but I wanted to talk about those things. I'm absolutely interested in hearing your comments about it. We will see you again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody.